Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishnah Shabbos, Perek Chaf, chapter 20. We're up to Mishnah Gimel, Mishnah 3. I dedicate this learning in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shlomis Rabinowitz, Shlomis Bas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. Okay. Mishnah Gimel reads, Ein shayrin es ha-chiltis b'paishrin. We may not soak chiltis. Chiltis, they translate here in the art scroll as asafedita.
Please.
Okay.
You don't speak
English.
Right.
I don't know what it
A
is.
type of sharp herb. Okay. In warm water. Now, you cannot soak it in the water. Why would you be soaking it in the water? So typically, you're trying to make a drink that's a medicine. It could be made as a regular beverage too, it seems, but it is typically made as a medicine. Now, as we have mentioned previously, we don't take medications on Shabbos under certain circumstances, which is a rabbinic decree, Gzeira d'Rabbanan, because since in the times of the Mishnah, many medications were made by grinding up herbs. We're afraid if you're going to take medication that you may land up grinding up herbs. That's the malach of teichen, of grinding. That would be prohibited from the Torah. So therefore, they said no taking medicine. Included in this, now, interestingly, somewhat included in this is the idea of making something that would be a medicine. Meaning, if I'm making a medicine for the sake of taking the medicine, that's the same thing as taking medicine. Yeah. But in this case, the Mishna is talking about you're not making it for medicine, making it as a regular drink. That's what you're doing. And it could very well be that this was not so unheard of. But being that typically it was made as a medicine, making this concoction, so to speak, is considered a weekday activity. It's considered a weekday activity, and therefore we say that it is forbidden again, midrabanan contra rabbinic law. So you're making this drink not necessarily as a medication, you're making it directly as a drink. However, being that it's typically made as a drink, this act that you're doing constitutes a weekday activity. Now, so that is if you're soaking it in water, in warm water. But you can put it into vinegar. Now, if you put it into vinegar, then it already appears more like you're making a dip, right? That was something, apparently this was not it was, if you put the chiltis in vinegar, it was a dip. So if you put it in the dip, it's not a problem, even if you're going to do it for medicinal purposes. Meaning you can get your medicinal effect from this chiltis in the vinegar too. But being that this act of chiltis and vinegar is not your typical act of making a medication, so even though you're doing it for medicinal purposes, it's going to be permissible, which you had before. If you take something, even if you're taking it for medicinal purposes, but it's something that is used regularly, like a hot tea, maybe you're drinking your hot tea because your throat is hurting you. That's why you're taking it. But people drink tea, right? Maybe you're taking a vodka because, you know what I mean, you want to get rid of your cold. But at the end of the day, people drink it regularly, so it's not a problem, even if you're taking it to get rid of your cold. So here too, when you put it into the vinegar, that's already just an act of a dip, making a dip, and therefore, even if you're doing it for medicinal purposes, it's okay. Next. Now, the next part of the Mishnah deals with animal fodder. So the ein sherinis ha-karshinin v'lo shafin. You may not soak karshinin. Karshinin, they translate it as vetches.
That's a kind of grass.
Right. Okay. You may not soak vetches in water. Okay. Why would you be soaking the vetch in the water? Because the vetch has this chaff or some other kind of waste of it that is connected to it. When you soak it in water, it loosens up and floats to the top, and floats to the bottom, and floats off. You can't do that on Shabbos because that's called berer. That's called separating. That's called selecting the bad from the good. Okay. Nor can you rub it because, again, you're rubbing it for the same reason. You're trying to get that stuff off. That's an act of berer. So you can't do it. But you could put the vetches, that's mixed with the waste into a sieve or into a basket to store them, even though the waste may fall through the holes of the sieve or basket since it's not your intention. Meaning, you're not putting it into the sieve or into the basket so that it should separate the stuff. That's not what you're putting it in there for. You're putting it in there because I need somewhere to put it. That's where I put it. Now, if you put it into the sieve or into the basket, because it has those holes, right? It could come out that you're putting into the basket could make it happen that some of the chaff will then fall off and fall through the sieve and be separated. So that would be an act of bearer, but that's not your intention, right? Your intention is not to do it. Your intention is to store it. So we paskin davar sheina miskavin, something that you don't intend to do but happens anyway. As long as it's not inevitable for it to happen, you may do it. So in this case, if putting it into the sieve or into the basket, it's not inevitable that the chaff will fall through and be separated, then even if it lands up happening, it doesn't matter because it wasn't your intention. But if you know that that will happen, or that's your intention, that's going to be a problem because that would be better. Because you know when you're putting it in there, you know it's going to happen. That's considered an act of bearer.
A sieve would be muktzah anyway.
So if a sieve is a klisha malachta le'isser, the reason it's muktzah is because its typical use is forbidden on Shabbos. But if I want to use it but if I have a permissible use for it, then it's not muktzah anymore. The problem's still good. So here, if I'm using it to store something, it wouldn't be muktzah. But the problem is, is it inevitable that it will land up acting as a sieve and separated between the chaff and the vetches? Okay, next. We may not sift straw with a sieve in order to separate what they call here the bristles that surround the wheat kernels, which are not fit for animal consumption. You got the straw, which I think is the stalk that the kernels are on. The kernels have some kind of a chaff that's on them that's not edible for the animals. So you would like to separate that stuff off of what you want to feed the animals, or if it's on the straw, I guess I think what happens is it gets mixed up with the straw. I think, when you chop it up, it gets mixed up with the straw. The straw the animals want to eat. The other stuff they don't want to eat. So you want to separate it. So we say you cannot sift the straw through a sieve, those parts which are not edible for the animal. Now, they bring down here on the bottom that we know Marakate sifting is one of the prohibited actions on Shabbos. If you're trying to sift straw with a sieve, that's not typically the way you do it. And therefore, since you're doing it in an unusual manner, it's only forbidden midrabanan, but it's forbidden. So at the end of the day, the Mishna is saying you cannot, you cannot separate, you can't go ahead and sift the straw with a sieve, at least midrabanan. Now, nor can you put the sieve with the straw in it on an elevated area so that the space between the sieve and the ground, so that there's space between the sieve and the ground, so that the chaff will fall through the holes in the sieve. Meaning, we're not talking about that you're going ahead and like taking the sieve, whatever this is, like shaking it, right? You have this, you have the straw and the waste already in the sieve, right? And I'm just putting it up in a high place so that there's space in between the bottom of the sieve and the ground. Now, when you create that space, it's going to start falling through. So if you're putting it up there, that's why you're doing it. Why are you putting it up there? That's not putting it up there because I'm putting it up there in a way that because now I have the space between the sieve and the ground, it's going to fall through. That's an act of bearer. That's an act of sifting. Again, not midorais. That's not the typical way to do it, but at least midrabanan, it's going to be forbidden. But you can take a sieve, scoop up the straw that has the waste in it, and put it into the animal's trough. Meaning, you're deciding, I'm not separating this stuff. I'm just going to take the stuff and put in the animal's trough. But you use a sieve. Now, again, although the sieve is muktzah, but I have a permissible use for it, I'm using it to scoop up something, and to scoop up something, it's not going to be muktzah because of that. The problem is, though, that as you're going ahead and you're picking it up with the sieve and you're moving it to put it and you're taking it to move to the trough for the animal, some of it may fall through. So again, the Mishnah says you can take the sieve and scoop up the straw with the waste in it and put into the trough. Again, if anything falls through, was that your intention? No, wasn't your intention. Your intention was, I just need to move this over to the trough. If it's inevitable that while you do it, it's going to happen, then you can't do it, even if it's unintended. So when the Mishnah says, but you can take the sieve and put the straw in the sieve into the trough, that's where I'm just using the sieve to scoop up something. My intention is not for the chaff to fall through. If it's not inevitable for the chaff to fall through, then if it does fall through anyway, that was not my intention, and therefore it's not forbidden. But if it's inevitable that's going to happen, then you're not allowed to do it, even though you don't have intention for it to happen, intention to sift out the waste. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.